Bring it on in. Beef up front. College football playoff first round picks and preview. Hard to believe we are already at this time of the year. But looking at the bracket, I know we got a couple, big spreads in the first round, but Miami, Texas A&M, I think could be a really good game. Um, Ole Miss, Tulane, we're going to talk about. That was a game we already kind of saw this year, but a lot of changes going on with both of those teams. JMU, Oregon. JMU's been blowing out every team in their sight recently. Let's see what some time off does for Oregon as well. Maybe they're a little rusty, and then Alabama versus Oklahoma. That's a pretty awesome game to start us off Friday. But I think if the top seeds advance this week, and with that being Oregon and Ole Miss, I think we're going to be really set up for some really strong second round matchups, regardless of the outcome of the Alabama, Oklahoma, and Miami Texas A&M game, Joe.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, people are going to complain all they want about the two G5s getting in. I'm just at the point, it's like the Power Five conferences screwed themselves with these rules. They didn't think in a million years that there would be a second group of five team ranked higher than the worst power conference team. Well, that happened. Good for JMU, good for Tulane. And, this is something that's really cool for those universities. And if they win, that's awesome. There's been a lot of stuff these past couple weeks, people trashing the group of five, people like Joel Klatt going in and speaking about March Madness and saying how March Madness sucks. I think he's an idiot, but that is what it is. I'm still looking forward to these four games. The first two clearly are going to be on paper should be the better matchups.
Yeah.
I am really intrigued to see how those games go because if you remember last year, Beef, all four of those first round games were ugly watches. All the home teams, won pretty easily. So I'm really interested to see if anything bucks that trend this year. Obviously, you're going to probably be more likely to get it in the Bama or Miami game. But even the two G5 games with Tulane and JMU, I'm really intrigued to see how Tulane does at Ole Miss. I'm
Mhm.
intrigued to see how Summerall deciding to stay for the playoff run is going to affect them. Already playing Ole Miss once, Kiffin is out. It's been kind of a weird past couple of weeks. A lot of rumors with Chambliss, whether he's staying or going. Um, I still think Ole Miss is a much better team. We'll get into that when we get to it. But I think that's a really intriguing game. And JMU, why not? Why can't they go and score 50 points? They might let up 60, but I think that could be that'll be a really fun game as well. A good nightcap to have on with the Packers and the Bears on Saturday night. A lot of just great sports weekend in general too, getting you ready for Christmas. But I'm ready to dive into it, Beef.
Yeah, Thursday night NFL game, Rams Seahawks is awesome. Then you got the first playoff game Friday. Then you got the other playoff game Saturday with Eagles, Commanders, and Bears Packers. And then Sunday is a great NFL slate, and even the Monday night game's good. So, this is a nice Thursday to Monday stretch, like you said, right before the holidays. And it's hard to believe how fast the season's gone. But, here we are potentially setting ourselves up for some great matchups next week. I mean, if chalk holds in that Oregon JMU game, you're getting Oregon versus Texas Tech. I think that's an awesome game. I think either of those teams, when at their best, have shown that they're capable of winning it all. Alabama, Oklahoma winner plays Indiana. Then if Ole Miss takes on Tulane again, you get Ole Miss, Georgia. We already saw those two teams play an awesome game earlier this year. And then Miami versus Texas A&M against Ohio State. I think when either of those teams are on their game, they could potentially even upset Ohio State. So I think the big kind of storyline, though, Joe, coming out of this weekend, it's like, all right, who from this weekend could we actually see making a run and winning the whole thing? Because you look at last year, Ohio State was the 8 seed, and they go in and they go on that absolutely dominant run to the title game. Notre Dame was the 7 seed. They go from the bottom there and make a run to the title as well. I think it was actually all the teams with the bye last year lost. So we'll see kind of if that changes anything this year, but very intrigued to start it off. And we'll start it off with that game on Friday night with number 9 Alabama 10-3. A little bit of a discussion if they should have been in or not. They didn't really look good in that SEC title game. They already lost to this Oklahoma team earlier this year, but they traveled to number 8 Oklahoma, who's 10-2, 8 o'clock kick on ESPN. Bama, though, 1.5-point favorite despite losing already at home this year to Oklahoma. Over under is 40.5, though, really low number for a college football playoff game.
Yeah, I feel like I'm walking into a trap here, but I'm taking Oklahoma. I think they're going to win the game 20-13. I think it's going to be low scoring. I believe it's going to be pretty cold at kickoff as well up in down. I don't know where. I think it's down from where I am in Connecticut, but in Norman, I think it's going to be pretty cold for the game this weekend. I could be 51 degrees. That's not that cold. Never mind. But I just think, we already saw this game be played out at Alabama. Oklahoma, you kind of saw was lucky. They staved off LSU, which, kind of locked up their bid. This was a really kind of job-saving season for Venables, though. I mean, there were a lot of murmurs about him, and his longevity at Oklahoma. He popped out a great season. I think them being at home, we saw it last year, and I already kind of alluded to it with all four home teams winning. Now it's not to say like I wouldn't be shocked if Alabama wins this game. I just think Oklahoma's going to win a low-scoring, ugly defensive battle. Bama hasn't looked great, and that's why I feel like I'm falling for a trap because you kind of see this a lot. These teams starting to fade a little bit, and then all of a sudden Bama's going to be up 21-7, and everyone's going to be like, well, of course Alabama's dominating Oklahoma right now. But I am going with Oklahoma to win this game. Like I said, Bama, Ty Simpson just cooling off at the wrong time. They were lucky to beat Auburn. The SEC title game, Georgia kind of controlled that game. They haven't looked great over the last month. I am curious to see if it's one of those like this little bit of a break kind of helps Bama get back to health, or maybe playing that extra game, in the SEC title game while Oklahoma was sitting at home watching you, scouting you again, is going to be the difference. And that's what I'm kind of leaning on here. So I'm going to go Oklahoma 20-13. I'll take them plus 1.5, and I'll take the under 40.5.
Yeah, I really like the under there with you, Joe. These are two teams that have, I think, really struggled offensively over the last few weeks. You look at Oklahoma, really ever since Mateer was the Heisman favorite, and then he injured his hand. He hasn't been the same player since he's came back, and he's kind of been more so just that game manager type guy. He's had a little bit of extended rest now. Is he able to kind of recover a little more with all that wear and tear not impacting him week in, week out, and make a couple big plays? Because I do think, as cliche as it sounds, this is going to be a game that comes down to third down. Two really good defenses, but two offenses that have been struggling. Ty Simpson hasn't been the same player, I think, over the last few weeks as well. And he really struggled in that matchup against Oklahoma, too, when Oklahoma defeated them. So I think which quarterback comes to play and makes those plays most on third down against these really strong defenses is going to be the one that has the edge in this one. And I think just overall total body of work for this season, I think Ty Simpson, I trust him a little bit more. I think John Mateer probably shouldn't even be playing right now with that injury, but it just goes to show his toughness and his willingness to go out there each and every week. But can he make a play on 3rd and 7 to extend the drive in their own territory for a game-winning drive? I don't know if I have that faith in him right now. And I'm not saying I have overwhelmingly faith in this Alabama team either, but I'm going to trust Ty Simpson to go out there and make a play when he needs it most over John Mateer and what he's looked like over the second half of this season. So I think it comes down to that. Two really strong defenses. I really like the under with you, Joe, but I'm going to go Alabama 17, Oklahoma 13. So Alabama minus 1.5, under 40.5. They'll move on to play they'll move on to play Indiana, the 1 seed. Funny just to say that out loud. And you got Oklahoma actually moving on to play Indiana as well. And I think if we get that Oklahoma-Indiana game, that would be a very similar game to what we saw with Indiana-Ohio State, where two teams really just kind of beating up on each other on the defensive end. All right, let's go to Saturday now. This is a game I'm looking forward to the most this weekend. A nice noon kickoff to start off a great day of football Saturday. Also, shout out to Villanova, Final Four for FCS. They host Illinois State on Saturday night. It's a shame they put it like right during the Eagles game, and it's good these other kind of college football playoff games aren't as great at night, but Villanova has a chance to go to the national title. That would be pretty cool for a team I saw twice in person this year. But number 10, Miami at 10-2, as we know, my least favorite team this year. I still think they're a potentially dangerous team to make a run, depending on if Carson Beck is throwing 5 interceptions or not. But they play number 7, Texas A&M down there in College Station, who went 11-1 this year. Obviously lost that last game of the year to Texas. Noon kick on ESPN. A&M, though, 3.5-point favorite at home here. Over under is 50.5.
Yeah, I'm going to go with A&M here, 28-24. So I'll take A&M minus 3.5. I'm going to go over 50.5. And, A&M, I know people are saying a lot about their SEC schedule, how they got a very, very, they got the bottom half of what ended up being the SEC this year. They couldn't control that in the preseason. That's just the way it is. But, losing that last game of the season at Texas, I think that's like really good for them. They got punched in the face and kind of got, sent back down to earth by their arch rivals who are out of the playoffs. But that's got to sting. And I think, not that this A&M team is nearly as talented as Ohio State was last year, but you saw Ohio State take that Michigan loss and then they went and got shot out of a cannon on their way to the national title game or national championship last year. I think A&M is going to use that motivation here against a Miami team that is very good. I'm not taking anything away from Miami, but the ACC is just very much not the same. And I hate being that guy. Oh, SEC, SEC. Like I'm not trying to be, an SEC, you know, lover here, but it's just I think the SEC is a much deeper league. You're losing games to an 8-4 Louisville, an SMU team that just lost to Cal. Like you're not seeing that as much. I know the SEC is definitely, becoming more condensed and maybe the top level teams aren't as, top dog as they once were, but I still think that loss to Texas really is going to, be a good thing for A&M heading into the playoff. I think it's going to help, them really lock in and get focused up for Miami, a team that I am interested to see if any like of that uncertainty leading up to the playoff kind of affected some of their practices. Now that they're in, they've obviously been 100% committed, but there's a little bit of drama going on there for a little while, and I'm really intrigued because you know A&M is not Virginia Tech. A&M is not Syracuse. You're going to on the road a huge game, the biggest. Would you say maybe the biggest game in College Station ever? Like
Yeah,
because it's the playoff. Obviously, I know they've only been doing home games of playoffs for 2 years, but first playoff game at A&M, first time they made the playoff because they got close a couple times, but this is the first. They're firmly in here at number 7. Winner goes and plays Ohio State on New Year's Eve. I'm also interested looking forward a little bit. If A&M does win, you're playing Ohio State at Jerry World. I'm
yeah.
interested to see how that fan split will be with A&M fans compared to Ohio State fans. But I think A&M wins this game. Um, Marcel Reed, I know, he's kind of been up and down a little bit, but I think at the end of the day, he's just not going to turn the ball over as much as Beck will. We've seen what happens. Miami went on the road already and had a loss to SMU. Those fans were crazy. These A&M fans are going to be nuts. I almost think Miami's lucky that this game is at noon. So if this was a night game, forget about it.
Yeah.
But I think A&M is going to win this game close. It's going to be a very good game. I think this is going to be the best game aesthetically of the whole weekend. So I'm going with A&M here to cover the 3.5. I'm going to go over 50.5.
Yeah, I'm currently in Texas. The other day it was Monday morning, I think it was like 30 degrees. Today, like right now it's like 65. And looking at the weather at College Station on Saturday, high of 77, low of 54. So weather won't be really a factor in this game. And I think we saw that like a lot last year. Like Tennessee in that Ohio State game, obviously a big blowout there. Indiana, the Notre Dame game, that game was single digit temperature. So I think we should see a lot of points in this one. I think probably my favorite bet of the week is this over actually 50.5. I think we've seen both these offenses capable of putting up a lot of points this year. But kind of like I talked about with John Mateer and Ty Simpson, I think it's going to come down to which quarterback makes the key turnover in this one. I talked about third down in Alabama versus Oklahoma. I think this one we see whoever makes kind of that key turnover late. I think that's going to be the one that costs these teams because Carson Beck, obviously, we know he's prone to throwing interceptions, especially down the stretch of games with like winning opportunities on the line. He's really turned it over during his time at Georgia and at Miami. Marcel Reed, a really good playmaker, really good with his legs, has improved as a passer this year, but still, even in that Texas game, a couple turnovers in that one. Whoever takes care of the ball wins the turnover battle in this game, I think is going to win this one. And this is a pure coin flip. Definitely the game I'm looking forward to the most. And as much as it pains me to say it, I'm actually going to take Miami to win this one outright. I think Miami, when they've been at their best, has been one of the best 3 or 4 teams in the country this year. Texas A&M, I think they were a product more so of a weak SEC schedule for them, and then also having some comeback kind of magic in them. Like that South Carolina game, they shouldn't have won that game. If they lost that game, lost the Texas game, they might not even have gone to the playoff, I think, with how poor their SEC schedule was. I think they were a big beneficiary of that. And Miami, too, obviously playing in the ACC, you can say the same thing about them. it's really kind of pick your poison in this one. I think the Miami defense is a little bit better than this A&M defense too, and has like that game wrecker and Ruben Bain that could cause a big fumble on Marcel Reed late, something like that. I do think this is one of those games where that comes down to who has the ball last, whether it's the team going in to score and scoring on a winning drive, or a team making a key turnover late to give the game to the other team. I think this is as close to a coin flip as you can get, and when you get that 3.5, I definitely side with taking the underdog there. Even if you think Texas A&M wins, I think Miami is good enough to keep this close and cover that game. But I'm going to go with Miami to win. Upset here. I think you're going to see at least one upset and potentially even two in this first round. Give me Miami to win, to move on. 30-27, Miami plus 3.5 and over a 50.5. I think we see a lot of points in this game. All right, number 11, Tulane, 11-2 at number 6, Ole Miss, 11-1. 3:30 kick on TNT. Ole Miss, 17.5 point favorite, over under 56.5. Big stuff here. John Summerall, head coach at Tulane, accepts the Florida job. Florida allows him to coach through the playoffs, regardless. If they lose this game, obviously he's done. He goes to Florida. He wins. He goes on and he continues to coach them until they're eliminated. And they travel to number 6, Ole Miss, who was also 11-1 this year, and they were the biggest news in the coaching carousel. You look at JMU and Tulane both allowing their coaches to stay and coach for the playoffs. Ole Miss said no. Lane Kiffin, you're gone. He leaves, obviously, for LSU. They promote Pete Golding, the defensive coordinator, so they at least have some continuity there. Charlie Weiss Jr., the offensive coordinator for Ole Miss, he stays on as well. He's going to be the one calling the plays, though, instead of Lane Kiffin. And Ole Miss demolished this Tulane team earlier this season. And pretty wild to see these two teams actually matching up, considering it was a non-conference matchup. Like, obviously, Alabama-Oklahoma played earlier this year, but that was a SEC game. We get a non-conference matchup from earlier in the year with a rematch here in the playoff. Ole Miss, 17.5 point favorite, over under 56.5. And Joe, if I'm being honest, this is the game I probably have the least feel on. Like I don't know what to expect. Did that Ole Miss team mail it in? Is that Ole Miss team motivated to stick it to Lane Kiffin? What are your thoughts on this matchup here?
I'm kind of with you. I don't really have a true one way or the other, like dead confident. I think Tulane will actually keep it within the number. Like I actually have this game being 28-20. I really think and this is more kind of off the field stuff, because I don't really want to go into on the field. Ole Miss obliterated Tulane when they played earlier this year. I'm looking on at some of the stats. Retzloff had 56 yards passing in that game against Ole Miss earlier in the year. Not good. 51 yards rushing. They kept him in check, and I do think Retzloff's a very good quarterback. Came over from BYU after all that stuff happened in the offseason. And I think, him getting a full season under his belt now, having to play Ole Miss, is going to help a little bit. But also just like the stuff with both the coaches, like Summerall being able to stay and coach, and he's donating money to Tulane's athletic department because he wants them to stay competitive. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of bad blood down there with him leaving. Kind of seems like they're understanding, they're happy for him, and I think those vibes are going to carry over, because a lot of those players are also probably realizing too, like, hey, this is it, my last ride at Tulane. Whether you're graduating, whether you got a couple years left, you're going to probably leave after this year, either going to Florida or going somewhere else. So I think that kind of continuity and stuff, when you have all the Lane Kiffin stuff going on, you have Chambliss, meeting commercials about, oh, am I going to enter the portal? Not enter the portal. Great for the young man. He's making a ton of money, but I am interested to see on how some of that off-field stuff translates on the field. This game, I feel like, is going to be kind of similar to when Ole Miss barely squeaked by Wazoo earlier this year. I think Ole Miss is the much better team, but I also think it's kind of tough from a standpoint of getting motivated for the game. You already know you killed this team. It's kind of like, oh my God, we got to play them again. We got one more home game. All the stuff going on with Kiffin. I think this is going to be kind of a sleepwalk type game. Tulane's going to give Ole Miss everything they have. That's why I think Ole Miss is going to win this game 28-20. I think Tulane's going to score late, and people are going to be like, okay, here we go. Maybe go for the onside kick, try to pull off the upset. Not going to happen. I think Ole Miss, ends up winning this game closer than people think. I'm going to take the plus 17.5. That's the only. We'll get into the next game in a little bit, but I think Tulane covers, and I'm going to go under 56.5.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss, Joe, is the biggest wild card in this entire college football playoff this year. I mean, I think they're either at the one point where everyone's just kind of pissed off and ticked off that Lane left, and they kind of mailed it in, and we'll see how much they actually want to play for this new DC in Golden, or they're pissed off at the world. Their main goal is to go out there and prove Lane Kiffin wrong, because I do think if Lane was there, given like their matchups, like who's to say that they can't beat Georgia in the next matchup? And then who's to say, what if Texas A&M or Miami were to upset Ohio State? You're telling me Ole Miss can't win that? Like when Ole Miss was at their peak this year, they were as good as anybody in the country at moments. They definitely were worthy, of a top five team. Things change. Lane leaves, and it's a whole new situation. But I think they either are completely mailed in, or this is a team that if you're going to like look to take a flyer on someone, 25-1 to win the whole thing. I don't think it's crazy at all to say that they could beat Georgia in the next round, and then if Ohio State were to get upset by Miami or Texas A&M, or even if they had to play Ohio State, like I don't think it's completely out of the question that they couldn't win that game. So you're looking for a flyer down the board. Ole Miss 25-1 to win the entire thing. I think you could take a bet on something else a little worse than that. But like I said at the beginning of this game, though, Joe, what do we expect from either of these teams? It's a complete no idea type of scenario for me. I think you kind of just got to revert back to what we saw in the regular season, and obviously Lane Kiffin not being there calling the plays is a major change. I think you can maybe argue he's the best play caller in the entire sport. But at the end of the day, we still have the same players playing on both of these teams. Trinidad Chambliss has been awesome this year since being named the starting quarterback. I'm going to take Tulane to keep it within the number like you, but I'm going to go with Ole Miss to win this game pretty comfortably. I'll go 34-17. They play with the fire under their ass. Tulane plus 17.5 to keep it within that hook. And then I'll go with the under of 56.5 there. All right, wrap it up for the first round. Number 12 JMU at 12-1 at number 5 Oregon 11-1, 7:30 on TNT. Oregon 21-point favorite, over under 47.5. I think a lot of people out there are upset, Joe, that we're seeing a 3-touchdown favorite in the opening round of the college football playoff for a 12-team bracket. Maybe if they went to a 16-team bracket or a 24-team bracket, it would be different opinions. But 21 points is a lot for a first-round matchup from a betting perspective, but also just a viewer's perspective as well for the primetime Saturday night game.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough seeing you have a favorite this big. But once again, and like I already talked about it, you had blowouts in the first round last year. I know the spreads on paper weren't as big, but they ended up being, pretty one-sided games. And ultimately, I don't think that's really the end of the world. And you've seen a lot of times teams with these big spreads, you've seen upsets happen before. All these people acting like a power conference team has never played a group of five team before, or a power conference team has played an FCS team before, is kind of crazy. You're talking like, you get people saying it's a safety issue. You have Oregon. Oregon played FCS Idaho last year and almost lost. Oregon needed a walk-off field goal to beat Boise last year, and they ended up being the number one, regular at the end of the regular season. They won the Big Ten. They were number one team heading into the college football playoff. You're playing a JMU team that's 12-1. Now, that being said, I think Oregon's going to cover the 21 points. I have Oregon winning this game 45-14. I think this is going to be a pretty one-sided game. I'm going to take the over 47.5. But I could be totally wrong, and we could look up in the fourth quarter and JMU either is tied or could potentially be leading. I just think Oregon's a better team because if you go through James Madison's schedule, and this is, no shot at JMU, but, outside of Louisville, if you go these teams, I don't have their like FPI rankings in front of me, but they can't be very good. And I think JMU's like strength of schedule is like 118th when they were doing the resume comparison to Duke for who would get to the last spot. But 12-1 is awesome, and I will say shout out JMU. You were an FCS team like 4 years ago, and now you are in the college football playoff. A lot of G5 schools and power conference schools have never been before. Can't figure it out. JMU, meanwhile, has had Signetti as a coach who's now in Indiana. Chesney's going to UCLA. This is awesome. You got Billy Napier now coming in next year for JMU. I don't think JMU's going anywhere. I think they're going to be a group of five team going forward. That's definitely going to be one to keep an eye on. and could potentially be in that next round of realignment, like maybe the American Conference. I'm not saying like, the SEC is going to pick them up, but one of these bigger G5 conferences could potentially make a move, snatch them up. But I just think Oregon at the end of the day is too good. I actually took Oregon. I had a boost for any college football playoff future. I got Oregon at plus 1050 to win the national title. Because, I think they'll win this game. Then, I love Texas Tech, but you are playing, if you had to, pick one of the four teams to play out of the bye teams, you're going to take a team from the Big 12. And then from there, semifinal game against Indiana, who knows? That was a close game before at Oregon. And that's the one thing this year. I think Ohio State, even though they lost a couple games, was by far and away the best team in the country when they played their A game. This year, if Ohio State plays their A game, I don't think that the gap is as significant as last year. And you can argue that Ohio State might actually be better than they were last year, but I don't think that gap is the same. And I think, especially with that bet, I could, I'm trying to kind of get into a hedge spot where if I could get, Oregon to the semifinal, maybe even cash out for a profit. But I really like Oregon. And I think if you want to take a first round team that could potentially win the national title, I think Oregon. I know you were talking about Ole Miss as well. But I would go Oregon here. I think they're going to win this game pretty easily. And, this is probably one of those games, we're all turning off to put on the Packers-Bears game.
Yeah, if Oregon does take care of business in this one, the second round matchup I'm looking forward to the most is that Oregon Texas Tech game. I think that could be a really fun game next week. But yeah, not a ton for me to say about this one. I just would like to give a shout out to JMU, the kind of consistency that they've had over these last few years. I know they've had some coaching turnover, but they just roll a new coach in and they continue to dominate. And for a team that just came up from the FCS a handful of years ago, to see kind of where their coaches have gone. Obviously, with Signetti at Indiana and everything he's done. Chesney now going to UCLA after this season. Pretty special stuff that what JMU has done. So it's kind of cool to see them find a way in here. Like, all right, who would have been the replacement team in the spot? Like BYU maybe or Vanderbilt. Like Vanderbilt would have been cool, but like, I think Oregon would have taken care of BYU. At the end of the day, if we're going to get the same result and Oregon's going to beat up on either of those teams getting in, I think, it's cool for JMU and might not be the best viewing product, but story wise, I think it's still a cool thing at the end of the day. I have a lot more confidence if you're going to tell me in a team to cover one of those two big spreads with Ole Miss 17.5 and Oregon 21. I would probably side more so with Tulane. I do think this one could get ugly. I do have JMU keeping it within the number, but barely. I think they maybe score like a touchdown late or something. I just think this is something that JMU hasn't seen all year. When Oregon's been at their best, the way that they have that speed on both sides of the offensive and defensive side of the ball, Dante Moore and the consistency that he's done at quarterback this year. And I even heard Evan Stewart, their star receiver who hasn't played all year due to an injury, might even be back. They might hold him out of this one and same for the Texas Tech game, but that's just another dynamic element getting added to the offense potentially. So I think this isn't much of a game. I think Oregon pounces on them early, maybe takes their foot off the gas a little, and JMU has the backdoor cover, but I'm going to go 38-20 here. It's Oregon, so JMU plus 21. Really like the over 47.5. I think we could see not Oregon hit that on their own, but I think we could see Oregon maybe get into the 40s. And if JMU is able to just put up a touchdown or 10 points, I think we could get the over there. So like the over in that game. But that'll do it for our first four matchups. Break down our last two picks, our dog of the day and our lock of the week. So, slim pickings here with only 4 games, but dog of the day, I'm going to go with Miami plus 3.5. They're the one dog I actually have winning outright in this one. Alabama is a upset seed wise, but on the betting market, they're actually a favorite. So my dog, I'm going to go with Miami plus 3.5. I love them to cover that. And I think they can win the game outright as well.
Yeah, my dog of the day isn't too exciting one. Oklahoma plus the 1.5. Betting wise, they are the slight dog, even though they're the home team. I'm going Oklahoma because ultimately, although I think Tulane will cover the 17.5, I'm not going to sit here and tell you to take Tulane money line. I will tell you to take them plus the 17.5, but I do not think they'll win the game outright. So that's why I'm going with Oklahoma plus the 1.5.
Lock of the week. I'm going to go with Alabama, Oklahoma under 40.5. We talked about it where both these offenses have really struggled over the second half of the year and really good defenses, some good defensive players and good defensive minds in that game. I think that one is like a first one to 20 potentially wins. I think I had 17-13 as my final, under 40.5 there. But I also really like the over of Miami and Texas A&M of 50.5 as well if you want to hit a double down.
Cool. I like both of those as well. My lock of the week, though, I'm going with the Oregon JMU over 47.5. Mainly because I think Oregon, I mean, in my score prediction, I have it 45-14. I think Oregon can almost get that on their own. Um, I really, I just think this game is going to be a blowout. I think Oregon's going to score at will, but I do think JMU will get at least one or two scores. I mean, we saw a couple years ago, and I'm not saying JMU was Liberty, but the last year, the 4-team playoff, Bo Nix's last year, Oregon played Liberty in the Fiesta Bowl. Liberty scored first, and everyone was like, "Oh, well, you never know." Then Oregon ended up winning. I think it was like 49-6. They dominated Liberty. I think you're going to kind of get something similar. Like, wouldn't be surprised, that first scripted drive, JMU, either gets a touchdown, field goal. People are saying, "Here we go. Why not the Dukes?" And then it will just be a total train wreck the rest of the way. I think Oregon will be able to almost cover that number on their own.
All right. Well, that'll do it for our first round here. Picks and preview beef up front on Pick Swap Media. As always, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Unsure when we'll record for the second round, but some great second round matchups to definitely dive into. If we don't talk before next week, happy holidays, everyone. As always, please like, please subscribe, and we'll talk soon.